Hi, my friends. I'm here alone in my apartment, but I'm picturing you in my mind, and I want to thank you for being here with me, for caring enough about your caree. That's the term I use for the person or people that you're caring for. And thank you for taking care of your needs so you'll be well enough emotionally and physically to stick around for a while. And not just to live longer than your caree, but to thrive and be happy and fulfilled while you're in this role in your life. And I also really appreciate it when you share these trainings with someone else you know who might need them. And that would just entail inviting them to the group where they can go to the units just like you did, and they can get this training for free. So let's dive in. Am I a good caregiver? A question I read a lot in Facebook group posts and hear from my caregiving clients and friends is, am I a good caregiver? Now, they usually don't say those exact words. They might say, I feel so bad because I totally forgot mom's doctor's appointment or her MRI or something, or my dad fell again today and I don't know how I let that happen. I should have been there to steady him. Or my most common problem, why do I keep taking all the crazy things that he says so personally and yelling at him? I know he can't help his delusions, and it just makes my life harder when I yell. He's incessantly afraid I'm gonna leave him, and so it doesn't help me when I get all excited because then he gets more afraid. And then he just gets a gazillion times more needy than he was 10 minutes ago. So anyway, we ask ourselves these questions. Why did I do that? Why didn't I do this? And we judge ourselves and we criticize ourselves and we decide we aren't doing our best. Does that sound familiar at all? But I want you to know that being a caregiver is one of the most challenging, thankless, lonely, and important jobs there are. It doesn't come with an instruction manual. Try to remember the first time you realized you were a caregiver. It's surprising enough to realize it ourselves, but then we think things like, does anyone else realize I'm doing this? And I don't have a clue what I'm doing. What if I make mistakes? What if I can't do it right? What if I hurt my caree, my loved one, or myself? The fact that we're so emotionally tied to our caree makes it more challenging because we care about them and we maybe love them and we want them to be happy and comfortable and well cared for. We want them to be safe. Another thing that surprises us can be how quickly the situation with our caree and in our own lives and the rest of our family and friends can change. Needs, conditions, your environment, like where you live, and the mess that you're surrounded by, mess that I'm surrounded by. I'm just going off, my experiences here, not saying anything about any of you. What your diet looks like, your sleep habits, and if you're getting enough sleep. And our ability to keep up with it all keeps changing. We're constantly adapting to new habits and routines, course corrections, and it can truly be exhausting. So in the back of our minds during all this, we keep wondering, am I doing a good job or am I messing everything up? The first thing I want to suggest is that you learn to notice your thoughts that creep up about your possible ineptitude or the problems that are going on, and maybe you're creating them and maybe you don't know what to do. And just realize that of course your brain is telling you something is wrong and that you don't know what you're doing, because every day is a new day and we learn as we go, but our brains don't want us to learn. They want us to stay safe, to conserve energy, and find connection. That's our automatic brain, our primitive brain. Of course, our cognitive brain loves to learn, but our automatic brain, the brain that we just kind of go on autopilot all day long, doesn't want to explore new things and take chances and work really hard. They just want us to stay safe, conserve our energy, and find human connection. So we can't wait until we know how to do things before we try them, and that includes caregiving. For instance, a baby doesn't wait until he knows how to walk before taking his first step. He learns to walk by taking steps and falling, correcting what he just did that made him fall, and then he falls again, and eventually it will become a fine-tuned skill. So you want to think intentionally for yourself. What does doing a good job as a caregiver look like to me? We have things that we assume maybe that comes from maybe what we see in the society around us, other people, in movies and TV and books, and what we think our husband thinks or our neighbor thinks or the doctor or other healthcare providers tell us, and we decide that perfection is being a good caregiver. So these other places are not the best place to turn to when deciding whether you're a good caregiver. The Facebook group is a good place to turn to because there's so much honesty and vulnerability in the caregiver Facebook groups. And I really, really appreciate that. And it's like having a little bit of sand in your swimsuit when you try to be perfect. It's little and annoying, but all the wiggling and scratching and leaving the sand in there is eventually going to irritate you and create a lot of pain. So you don't want to try for perfection. It's not going to happen. Turn to your own self internally to intentionally avoid defaulting to perfection. And I'm just going to talk about two things specifically that people think makes them a good caregiver. Number one, is my house clean and in order? And everything's all taken care of, and my Carrie is perfectly happy and comfortable in his chair, and the bathroom's all cleaned up, and blah blah blah. And number two, is my Carrie happy, and is everyone else I'm responsible for happy? I'm telling you right now, a clean house is not a good gauge of whether you're a good caregiver, but it feels like it is if we haven't identified what a good caregiver is. And whether your Carrie is happy is not a good gauge either. His or her attitudes, their illness, mental capacity, and their complaints often have nothing to do with whether you are being a good caregiver. Those are what we default to if we don't define for ourselves what is a good caregiver. I ask my clients sometimes to share with me what they think a good caregiver looks like and what they expect of themselves. And some things that I hear are, I just want my husband or my dad or mom or my grown child to be comfortable and happy and feel loved. I want them to get well. I just want to keep her clean. I just want to be nice, and I just want her to do her exercises, or I just want him to go happily to daycare or participate in the shower that I have on the schedule today, or whatever, or try to be as independent as possible. These are all things that we want for our Carries. But those things are all about what your Carrie does or feels. You could show your loved one all day long how much you love them. You could take care of them and clean and cook and do all the things, and they still might not feel loved because of dementia or just because of depression or their illness or whatever. Sometimes they're a lot like teenagers and 3-year-olds, all in one, right? And so that's on them. That doesn't mean you failed as a caregiver. They still might not choose to feel loved or be able to feel love, like I said, with dementia or confusion. So to decide whether or not you're doing a good job based on anyone else's behavior isn't fair to you or to them. Other people who help or don't help or judge or criticize are in their own space too and need to work out their own idea of how their life is going and what they're contributing to the world. And so their judgments of what you're doing as a caregiver has nothing to do with your abilities as a caregiver and your intentions and your love. You know far better than I do or they do or anybody else does yourself and your carry. So I'm going to share with you what I know about being a good caregiver for me, what it looks like for me, and how I want to show up in my role taking care of my husband who has schizophrenia and many physical ailments too. So for me, it has to be simple. It can't add to my to-do list or expectations or things to keep track of. All the training I offer here in the group is designed to take things off your plate, not add more things for you to have to accomplish on any given day. So the 3 things I expect of myself are, number 1, love him like crazy. That is within my control. Yes, he frustrates me, but he's usually very easy to love. It comes naturally for me. Today is actually my 30th anniversary. And for those of you who are seeing the video after today, March 3rd, 2020 is my 30th anniversary. And it feels like 100 years. But hey, we're getting there. And especially when I remember who my husband is inside and what God thinks of him, I have a picture of Jesus that says, the greatest gift I could give you is if you could see yourself the way I do. So whether you believe in Jesus or not, you might feel, as I do, that everyone is infinitely precious and lovable, at least to someone. I know that every person has worth and value. And when I coach my clients, I try to have love for everyone in their story because many people come to me certain of who the bad guys are. My mother-in-law or this neighbor or the caregiver, the nurse or whatever, or the loved one that they're taking care of. And that if they would just behave like this or that, everyone would be better off and happy. And so I try to teach that we can simply expect everyone to be themselves and we'll have a lot less disappointment. Just love them, just as they are. Number 2, I protect him. I monitor his health and help him make good decisions. I have to help him because stress and some foods make him bleed profusely. So I work to provide for us so he doesn't have to deal with employers, coworkers, and the public. I've been providing for us for over 20 years. For you, protecting your carry might be not allowing him or her to wander outside, to drive the car maybe, taking the keys away and dealing with that blow up that might happen. You have to maybe not let them eat candy or chips all day, or maybe you have to force them to eat, or not force them, but encourage them to eat. You want to get them the choices and opportunities and keep them safe so that they can be as healthy as they can. But like I said, you can't force them. You can provide the opportunities and you need to protect them, but it's up to them whether they take advantage of the advice that you have and the things that you provide for them. And number 3 is I have to communicate with him. Notice I didn't say he needs to communicate with me, family, friends, people at church, or neighbors, or anybody else. He gets to choose whether to communicate with me or whether to communicate with all of them. And I don't need all the other people to communicate with me. I only need to communicate with my husband. And I need to communicate with my employer and my clients and my family. But I have my own back. How much I communicate is up to me. Sometimes my husband can't communicate because of his delusions. He usually wants to communicate with me more than I want because I'm busy working all day until 4 or 5, but he really just likes to start talking about things that come up in his head. For you, it's important to determine what communication looks like for you and make sure you're doing it in a way that you know you did your best. And communication usually means listening. If someone has dementia, communication might look like telling her that she's already had breakfast, but would she like a snack if she's hungry? Or you might want to answer 35 times the same question about when lunch will be ready. Or you might want to answer that her husband is just, going to be a little while when maybe he's passed away. So you learn tools to communicate more effectively and more humanely, and in what way works for you. So I know some of that is not exactly how you will decide what makes you a good caregiver. Again, those 3 things that I just went over are love him or her, protect them, and communicate with them. It is not your job to make them happy. So I just want to leave those with you, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I hope that you got something from this training and that you can have confidence and joy in your caregiving. I know caregiving fatigue, or what is it called? Compassion fatigue is a big issue with people. It's a really tough situation. You need to take care of you first. Take care of your needs, love yourself, do things that fill your bucket, float your boat, or blow up your skirt, or however you want to put it. And so that's it for today. And I love you, and I'll see you on the next training. Bye.